Think we're ready to go. Allison, are you able to hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay,
All right, we have everybody.
think we do.
All right. Well, welcome and thank you all for being here. I'm Allison Craig. I'm the interim planning director for the city of Charlotte. If you can go to the next slide, I guess, Alan. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and just welcome the group. I understand that there were probably a good number of you came to the drop-in yesterday, and I'm really glad that you're excited to learn more. We really appreciate your service to the city and service to the planning department. As you all are aware, we adopted the city's first unified development ordinance in August of last year, and it will go live and be effective on June the 1st. It's the first time that we've had a unified development ordinance, and it's a major part of moving the city forward and creating clear and forward-thinking guidance for future growth of our city. So what I wanted to do today is just kind of talk a little bit about the purpose of the group, why we're here, and what we are asking of you. And then we'll go into introductions since we all may not know each other, and just to go around the room and introduce one another. So Alan, if you can go to the next slide. So this is a volunteer committee appointed by the planning director, and I want to say that we had about 100 applicants for the group, which was really exciting that we had such a large number of people that were interested in being involved. And you'll find as we introduce one another that there's a lot of different perspectives in the room, which is really important. So you're going to have neighborhood advocates, folks from sustainability groups, designers, development professionals. We even have folks that are also serving on other boards with our community, like NEST and Equitable Development Commission, which are important groups that were formed as a function of the comprehensive plan. And so the purpose of the group is really to serve as a sounding board on amendments. So when the ordinance was adopted, we viewed it as a living document, something that we will continue to update and change as we learn, frankly, from potentially unintended consequences, as we learn from other initiatives that are going on, like NEST and our Housing and Safety Committee are looking at anti-displacement strategies. So we know that this will be something that we will continue to update, and really just, I think, particularly over the next couple of years, have a series of rolling text amendments. And so what we are asking for you is to provide feedback to us on different ideas that we're proposing as text amendments for the Unified Development Ordinance. So, and this is a group, I just wanted to be clear too, that this is a feedback group. This is a sounding board. You're getting things straight off from staff discussion and staff, hearing from things in the community potentially. There won't be a vote or a formal recommendation on things that are come out of this group. There's an interlocal agreement between the city and the county, and that is and that creates the planning commission. And so the planning committee of the planning commission is really the one that makes a formal recommendation to city council on things related to text amendments. So, but this group is here to hear things initially and give us your perspectives from all the different seats that you sit on. So right now we are meeting on Thursdays from 11:30 to 1 via Zoom, approximately once a month. I know there's been some questions about, like, hey, I want to meet in person. So it's just a tough balance between the convenience of Zoom versus the networking opportunities that that come from meeting in person. So something that we're open to considering something, or maybe we do a little bit of both, but certainly provide feedback to us. But we have found that this was really successful throughout the development of the UDO to meet virtually via Zoom. So, and then the meetings they're not live. We want to focus on the comments and the thoughts that are coming from you all. And when things are live like that on Facebook or YouTube or similar, it's hard to also manage the chat. This is really intended, again, to be a group that is providing initial feedback, and we're focused on the conversations that we all have together. And so, and that's, one important part of this too, is that we'll present. So the way we'll do things is we'll present ideas to you, and please feel free to use the chat. We'll certainly stop and ask for questions, comments, feedback. So I know we're on a virtual screen here from our own workplaces and homes, but please feel as though this is a safe space to say whatever your thoughts are, or if you have questions. This is a group that will be meeting over the next couple of years, maybe monthly, depending on the level of text amendments that we have. And so we just want you to feel as though this is a place that all opinions and ideas and questions are respected, and we appreciate the time that you've dedicated to us and to making the Unified Development Ordinance even better. So I want to just go mention too that, so we've reconstituted this group. We felt as though once the UDO was adopted and we didn't have, we needed a new group and wanted to kind of understand what the constitution of that group was. But we've had an ordinance advisory committee in place since we really started talking about a UDO back in 2016. And so, and that group started off as a small group of industry professionals. And then over time, we really felt as though it was important to have the community involved. And so the group organization and representatives have really evolved over time from 2016 until the point at which the UDO was adopted last summer. And that ordinance advisory committee was great, a great and essential tool in getting the UDO adopted, certainly serving as ambassadors. And in that group, we had a very important chair that led us in the past, and Tony has agreed to continue on as a committee member throughout our next phases of developing the UDO. And I wanted to give Tony a few minutes just to talk about his past with the Ordinance Advisory Committee. Now we're the UDO Advisory Committee, but I wanted to give him a few minutes just to talk about his perspective and sharing that group in the past. He was certainly involved in the UDO long before I even came to work for the city. And so I wanted to give him just a few minutes before we start to introduce everyone else, just to say a few words. Tony?
You want to mute yourself. All right, I'm sitting with Allison because I thought we were in person today. So unexpected benefit, but a little weird. So we're trying to avoid feedback here. Can everybody hear me? Maybe give me a thumbs up.
We can hear you, Tony.
Is that a yes? Great. Well, this is such a great group of people. Thanks, Allison. I want to thank the staff because I served on the Planning Commission from 2011 to 2017 for 6 years, and overlapped with a lot of you all, even back in those days, in your various roles, including I see John Friday, who was we overlapped on the commission. And this concept and this idea started being the subject of discussions, gosh, at least 8 years ago. And the staff has stuck with it ever since then and really put together a model process for this. Sorry, my phone was glitching for a second. One that the whole country can point to really as a successful, engaged, rigorous, transparent, open process for adopting both a UDO and a comprehensive plan. And this committee is a natural outgrowth of continuing that process of engagement. And I know many of you were on the advisory committee before the ordinance was adopted. And so I know you had a front row seat to all of that. But also, they're not here, but I want to thank the city council for persevering and adopting this ordinance. And to me, the key to it and the key to what we're doing going forward is the openness, the transparency, the level of engagement, the rigor that we're all bringing to this process. And that's, in my view, if you have that kind of process, you're going to continue to get good results that have consensus, results that the community knows about, and that never have unanimity, and that's really impossible. But we'll come out with good policies, good amendments, good outcomes, and ones that are accepted and that there's consensus for. And I, in addition to wearing my hat as former chair of the Planning Commission, I'm now, and I think I know most of you, but I'm the Charlotte area board member on the North Carolina Board of Transportation. And I also chair the board's finance committee. So I'm neck deep in both the transportation side and the finance side. And so I bring that perspective to this, as well as how it affects sustainability and where we're going as a city. And I've spent a good bit of time exploring other cities that are more walkable, more bikeable, more sustainable than Charlotte. So I bring that perspective as well. But I'll be quiet now and thank you all again for being here and for what you have done and what you will continue to do with this. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Tony. Alan, if you could pull the slide up back up with the committee members. So I just wanted to mention that, again, we had over or about 100 people that signed up interested in joining this group. And what we tried to do is really make sure that we were well represented geographically across the entire city of Charlotte. We wanted to make sure that we had people that worked in industry, but also people that worked in the community and could really bring the community perspectives forward. And so I'm really, really pleased and excited to have this group together. And I, again, really appreciate your willingness to work with us and provide feedback on text amendments that we have that will be coming to you over the next couple of years. So what I'd like to do is, if you could come off mute, if you're able, and just introduce yourself, and let's just go through the list like as it's presented on the PowerPoint slide, just for ease. And so if we could go start at the top left and go across the row and then go down to the next row. If you could each introduce yourselves really quickly, that would be great. So starting with Angela, if Angela's here.
It looks like we're going to have to unmute people.
Okay.
Alan, are you able to get there?
Yes.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I put in the chat, I was muted. Awesome. Well, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Angela Ambrose. I followed this process for a long time. I think I first started following with the 2040 back in maybe 2017 or 18. With this process, I work in real estate. I'm a community-based educator, developer, wear a lot of different hats in the community. And I'm just here to just learn more about this process and be able to help inform more of the community at large on some of the things that I see that are coming up. But I think we do have an awesome group, and I just look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Angela. I think everybody should be able to unmute themselves. So Matt, you're next if you want to try to do that. And if you can't, just let me know and I'll see if we can fix that.
There we go. There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Matt Langston. I'm a landscape architect with Landworks Design Group. I've got over 30 years of experience in practice, and I've been in Charlotte practicing for over 20 years. been involved with some of the tree ordinance rewrites and been working with the UDO bits and pieces for a while. I come in as a practitioner, trying to help apply all these rules to the ground and to actual projects. Also the Ribbit Chair for 2023. Looking forward to working with everybody.
Rob?
I'm Rob Nanfeld. I'm the Executive Director of the Real Estate and Building Industry Coalition, also known as REBIC. Been part of this process for several years now. I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brenda Campbell. I'm with Westside Network, which is a network of home-based childcare providers. And I'm also the vice chair of the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't look like, we've heard from Tony. It doesn't look like Julie is here. If I'm wrong about that, please jump in and tell me.
She
I don't
wasn't
see-
able to make it.
Okay, thank you. And I also, does anyone see Patricia Campbell? I don't see her either. So, Mark, you're next up.
Yeah, glad to be here. Mark Laughlin. I'm a native Charlottean, recently retired and a former planning commission member. Also work with Park and Rec, so I've got a lot of interest along the Park and Rec side of things, and just look forward to working with the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Adam?
Good morning, everybody. Excuse me, I'm Adam Rue. I'm the president and executive director of South Park Community Partners. We're an economic development nonprofit that administers the municipal service district in South Park in partnership with the city. Prior to that, I was on the executive team at Center City Partners, and great to see everybody. Looking forward to being a part of this work.
Thank you, Adam. Linda?
Morning, everyone. I'm Linda DeTroya. I'm active in what is called Prosperity Village Area Association. We are in the northern part of 485, just below Huntersville line. I'm also very active on Park and Rec, do a lot of volunteer, keep Charlotte beautiful, do a lot of volunteering, and have worked with different builders in regards to how things are developed in our Prosperity Village area. And happy to see everyone.
Thank you, Linda. Roger?
Hey, everyone, this is Roger Manley. I'm managing principal with BB&M Architecture, firm that we've been practicing in Charlotte for close to 20 years. I've been here longer. We deal a lot with the new UDO and have been kind of tracking it for a couple of years and providing feedback when we can. Good to meet you all.
Thank you, Roger. Dennis? Dennis, are you able to unmute? Okay, let's skip Dennis for now. Nate?
Yeah, good morning. Nate Doolittle, partner and civil engineer with Land Design. I've been with Land Design and in Charlotte for about 22 years. So look forward to another committee and process on this ordinance.
Thank you, Nate. Carolyn?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Carolyn Millen. I'm president of Eastway Park Sheffield Park Neighborhood Association. I currently serve on the city's Equitable Development Commission. I also serve on the County Park and Rec Advisory Board. I've been involved with this since it first began, and I've been active in the East Side. I'm also vice chair of Charlotte East organization. So looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Chad? Chad, are you?
Yep, there we go.
Yep, there we go. Okay.
I'm Shad Spencer. Well, I've retired from the city last year, end of last year. And so I'm sure the staff didn't really think they'd see me again, but here I am. I'm working part-time with Van Allen. And I've been with the city for like 26 years. I was zoning administrator for the city for about 9 years. So I've worked on this document for a while. So it's good to be back on a committee where I can kind of see it follow through and finish up on it, any modifications. So good to be here, and thanks.
Thanks, Shad. John?
On Friday. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm a retired architect, former chair of the Planning Commission. I think I've worked on the UDO since the beginning. I've been involved in neighborhood land use issues all over Charlotte for about 40 years. So very familiar with this ordinance and what it can do for us.
Thank you, John. And our other John Morris.
This is the John without an H. I've been here 45 years in Charlotte, been practicing in real estate. I'm an industrial developer with Beacon Partners, senior partner for 29 of those years. I'm on the board of the Carolina Thread Trail, which maybe conflicts a little bit with my developer tendencies, as well as the board of KIP, the Knowledge is Power Program, state board for KIP schools. I've been on this OAC, the former OAC, since November of 2016. And prior to that was on the Building Development Commission, which is the Citizens Advisory Board for the Code Enforcement Group, the vertical part of the building process that works so closely with the city. And I was chair of that from 2007 to 2013. So just really happy to join this group and serve the city. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let's see, Andrea, you're next.
Hi, thanks everyone. I appreciate being part of the group. I was asked by the Steel Creek Residents Association to be a voice at the table for one of Charlotte's most quickly expanding areas, and serve on their land use committee. And my background was as an AICP certified planner up in Ohio, and I worked for an exurb of the Cleveland area that has a profile very much like the city of Charlotte, and specifically Steel Creek. I was primarily a land use and transportation planner. I worked very closely with the civil engineers on a lot of engineering projects, securing grants for transportation expansion, and also environmental protections. I find it quite interesting. One of the first things we're tackling is a landfill. The community that I worked in had a very innovative approach to using their landfills to capture methane, and that's what powered our civic electricity. In any event, I'm really glad to be a voice at the table, and looking forward to working with everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Shamaya?
Good morning, Shemaya Haynes, and I am the president of the Greater Enderley Park Neighborhood Association, and looking forward to working with and getting to know you all, and being able to contribute to this process. Thank you.
Cheryl?
Hi, everybody. I am the Senior Vice President for Planning and Development with Charlotte Center City Partners. And I've had the honor of playing a very small role in the, I guess, design and planning for of this great city, particularly been involved in the long range planning for Center City, Uptown and South End, working with very closely with our partners in the planning department. So look forward to working with everybody here on this committee.
Thanks, Cheryl. Eric? Eric? Can you unmute? Okay, there you go.
Now I'm good. Yeah, it was a little sticky there. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces. Great to meet the new faces. I work for Sustain Charlotte, handle their land use policy and occasionally their transportation policies. I've worked for several years on the OAC and other committees with the city. Volunteer neighborhoods, have been a neighborhood leader in previous years as well. I live in the NODA area that is rapidly growing, like a lot of Charlotte, and look forward to the good work that we're going to do with the UAC in the future.
Aaron.
Hey, everybody. My name is Aaron Hauk. I'm currently the Director of Regional Policy at the UNC Charlotte Urban Institute. I lived in Charlotte since I was 8 years old, and I come at this from a little bit of an academic background. I'm a PhD in political science and study local political economy, which includes land use policies and then also land use policy making. And I look forward to working with anyone.
Thanks, Aaron. And Dennis, we're going to get back to you now. Last but not least. Dennis, have you got your microphone issues worked out? And unmute. I'm sorry about that. It doesn't look like I have the ability to unmute.
How about now?
Now we can hear you.
There we go. There we go. Appreciate that. Yes, I'm Dennis Rory. I'm with Meritage Homes. We are a national home builder headquartered out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Been in Charlotte since 2007. Worked in kind of various organizations throughout and in the Charlotte region. Looking forward to working with everybody here on this committee.
Thanks, Dennis. We're going to move forward with the rest of our slides fairly quickly. Just to go over the meeting procedures. We've got a couple of things to cover today and a couple of points that we're going to stop and open the floor for discussion and questions and feedback. That doesn't mean that you can't also put things in the chat, and when we do stop, we'll try to go back and see if you've asked a question or made a comment in the chat that we need to talk about. But other than that, we're going to start with just a very high-level overview of the UDO and our place types. I know that some of you are more
Alan?
familiar. Yes.
I think Allison wanted to introduce the staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Folks would know who are on here, and we need to get her unmuted.
Yeah, let me stop sharing so we can go back to that other view.
All right, perfect. Okay, thanks, Alan. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you know all the faces that we didn't introduce. They're probably city or county staff. So I wanted to make sure we kind of go through all of those. So first, Laura Harmon, she's the UDO project manager, and Alan is the deputy project manager for the UDO. And then we have also the UDO team. You've got Kevin May, Mariah Wozniak, Sandy Montgomery, and Andrew Ossel. So that's the UDO team. We've got other city staff on here too. Alicia Osborne, who is the project manager for the comprehensive plan, as well as the area planning process, which is something important that you all should be following. We can give you more information later. Shannon Fry, she runs the Charlotte Development Center and is the division manager for land development. She will be responsible for UDO implementation alongside Solomon Fortune as well. Candace Rory, our strategic initiatives manager, is here. Dave Petton, who is our rezoning manager. And then finally, we've got Aaron Stanforth with Mecklenburg County. Did I miss any staff?
Robin
Byers. Is Robin on here? I didn't see her earlier.
And Joe Hack also with Mecklenburg County.
Okay, very good. Robin Byers, she is with Long Range Planning and is leading the alignment, or helping Laura lead the alignment rezoning process. And then you said, oh, Joe Hack with Mecklenburg County also. So,
and Allison, I also see Solomon with us today.
yeah, I mentioned Solomon. He's with
I'm
UDO
sorry.
implementation in Shannon's group. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry. I just wanted to make sure we knew everybody that was on the screen here, and that there's a lot of staff dedicated to working on text amendments and also implementing these, as well as hearing your thoughts and perspectives as a committee. So thanks. Back to you, Alan.
Thank you. Okay, let me go back to sharing the slides. And as I was saying, we're going to have to do this fairly quickly so we can stick to our 1 o'clock endpoint. A brief overview of the UDO and where it kind of fits in with everything. The UDO are a set of legally binding development regulations. We've combined regulations that used to be in several different places in our city code, and you can see all those on the right-hand side. They were in different chapters of the city code into one unified development ordinance. It's designed to implement the vision that we have for the city, which we get from our comprehensive plan and our strategic and action plans, other plans, as well as from the community area plans, an effort that we are just initiating now, and then any specific plans that may come out of that effort or other efforts. So we've got a couple of different maps that we're going to be concerned with. One is the policy map, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. And the other is the zoning map, which is a map of the city plus our extraterritorial jurisdiction, showing which zoning districts are in various areas. So the UDO is broken down into some general categories. We've got some introductory provisions, and then we have a section on zoning, which covers the different zoning districts, the various uses that we have and where they're allowed, as well as our general development standards. The next section is our stormwater and natural resources section. Then we've got a section on subdivision, streets, and other infrastructure. And finally, our last section is on the administration of the UDO, and that includes talking about nonconformities and enforcement. Place types. We're going to be talking about place types today, and you need a general working knowledge of what they are. So our comprehensive plan, our Charlotte Future 2040 comprehensive plan, which was adopted last year, divides the city. It doesn't divide, it applies a place type designation to all land in the city, one of these 10 place types. You can think of them as kind of, we used to have a future land use map, although place types go well beyond what a typical land use map would talk about. And for each of these 10 place types, and it may be a bit hard to read for you, but there are zoning districts. There are typically more than one zoning district that would be recommended for a place type, and which one of those districts you use depends on the location and the context of your place type. I'll mention that the Parks and Preserves doesn't have its own zoning district because parks and preserves can actually be in any zoning district, and so we don't need a separate zoning district. And then our TOD districts, transit-oriented development, we have 4 of those, and they can go across our centers place types. You can see over on the right-hand side, we've got 3 centers place types: neighborhood center, community activity center, and the regional activity center place type. And we're going to talk more about those as we go along. This is a section of the place type map. And if you're familiar with our old future land use map, it's similar in appearance. It's got various colors representing our 10 different place types. And you can see the legend on the right. You can get there at the link. I've put the link in the little orange bar at the bottom of the screen, but if you start at our comprehensive plan website, cltfuture2040.com, and search around a bit, you'll find a link to the policy map, which shows the various place types. It has a search bar function in the upper left. So if you're looking for a particular street address, or if you happen to know a parcel number, you can enter it there and search, and it will take you right to that location and show you what the place type recommendation is for that location. We're also going to be talking about uses and where they're allowed in which districts. And so I want to spend some time to talk about the use matrix. If you're not familiar with it, You'll find this in the UDO in Article 15, which is the article of the UDO that covers uses, not only where the uses are allowed, but it also defines the uses, tells us what each use is, and lists any prescribed conditions for that use. And we'll talk about prescribed conditions in a minute. So the way to read the use matrix is that all of the uses that are listed in the UDO are down the left-hand column. This is only a small screenshot of the use matrix, which goes on for several pages. But all of the uses are in the left-hand column. They're generally organized by category. So you'll have your residential uses in one area, then you'll have commercial uses, industrial uses, and so forth. This looks like it is an excerpt from our commercial uses. So the uses you see going down the left are some of the commercial uses. Across the top row, you'll see the zoning districts, starting with ML1, which is manufacturing and logistics, ML2, IMU, which is innovation, mixed use district, and so on. I want to mention that because we have so many different, so many zoning districts in the UDO, we couldn't fit all of this information on a single table and still make it legible. So when you go into the UDO and look for the use matrix, table 15-1, it's broken in half in the middle. We had to do it in two parts. This is from the second part of it. The first part will have the residential districts and I think the commercial districts and the campus districts. So if you don't find what you're looking for, you may be in the wrong, you may be in the other part of it. So we've got part one, this is part two. So just keep scrolling down and you'll see where the break is, and we pick up again with the same uses, only with a different set of zoning districts. Hope that makes sense to everybody. And just how you read this is, if you have a use, you find the use, let's just say, I don't know, a hotel motel, which is down here. Working across, if you see an X in a box, it means that that use is permitted by right in the column that X appears in. So with my circled example here, it appears in the IMU zoning district, innovation mixed use. That means you can do a hotel or a motel in the IMU zoning district by right. You don't have any other conditions. And following across, you can see that there are several other zoning districts where you can use that. If you see a PC in a box, it means that there are prescribed conditions. It means that that use is allowed in that zoning district, but there are certain conditions that apply. And the prescribed conditions are also in Article 15. So in my example up here for an employment or a labor service agency, you can do that in the ML1 district under prescribed conditions. If you see a C, it means that that use requires a conditional zoning, and we'll talk about what that is in a minute. So looking at this example all the way down at the lower part for a raceway or a drag strip, you can do that in the ML2 district, but you need a conditional zoning for that, or conditional rezoning. A C/PC means that that use can go in that district, but it will need a conditional plan, and it also has prescribed conditions. So in this example, a gas station can go in the NC district with a conditional plan and prescribed conditions. And then finally, a PC/C, which looks a lot like the C/PC, means that in certain cases that use has to comply with the prescribed conditions, and one of those prescribed conditions may be that a conditional rezoning is required in that particular district. And then finally, all the blank areas that are shaded in gray simply means that that use is not permitted in those zoning districts. Let's move on to a couple of other things you should know, and this is important. The UDO is only applicable to new development, so it doesn't go back and apply the UDO standards to things that are already built and on the ground. So we're talking about new development or additions to existing development or expansion, but it doesn't go backwards and apply its conditions retroactively, the things that are already out there. A couple of other things, prescribed conditions we've talked about. These are standards for a principal, accessory, or a temporary use that are typically used to mitigate the impacts of that use on adjacent areas. That's typically why we would have a prescribed condition for a certain use in a certain location. And then a conditional zoning map amendment, or a conditional rezoning, as we sometimes refer to it, it's a legislative process. It's a rezoning. It has to be approved by city council. It requires a public hearing, a zoning committee recommendation, and it is an amendment to a normal conditional zoning district, but typically requires a site plan and some site-specific notes on the plan that are binding, legally binding to the development of that site. So that's our overview of the UDO and some other information in a nutshell. I can see that we've got some comments in chat, but I really can't keep up with those. So Laura, do we need to stop here to address those, or can we move forward?
I think we can move forward, Alan.
Okay, thanks. Let's talk about the first of the two text amendments that we're here to talk about. It's number 2023-057. And for lack of a better name, we're calling it commercial uses in certain place types and drive-throughs. I wanted to bring this slide up again just as a reminder of place types and zoning districts and how they work together. We're going to be talking specifically about primarily our last three columns, the centers place types. But we're also going to be talking about our commercial zoning districts, specifically our CG, general commercial, and our CR, regional commercial. So a place type is it's a vision or an expression of what we want places to be. It doesn't always equate to what they are today. It's a vision for going forward, how we want these places to develop in the future. A commercial place type is typically an auto-oriented place type for retail and services and so forth. Typically not set up for pedestrian friendly, not necessarily bike friendly. The example in the photo on the left is a typical commercial place type as we have it mapped now on the place type map, on the policy map. Our three centers that we're going to talk about today are, one of the primary differences is their scale. So the neighborhood center is the smallest scale of our centers place types. And it's a mixed use walkable area, typically embedded within neighborhoods or adjacent to neighborhoods that provide convenient access to goods, services, dining, and residential for nearby residents. Our community activity centers are larger, they're mid-size. Typically, they're on transit corridors or major roads, and they provide the same kinds of goods, services, dining, and entertainment, not only for nearby residents, but for regional. So their draw is typically greater than you would find for a neighborhood center. A community activity center, this happens to be Woodlawn Avenue near the Park Road Shopping Center. If you know that area, you know that you may travel from a longer distance to get there to do something, or to buy something, or to go out to dinner, than you maybe would travel to a neighborhood center, unless you happen to live close to that neighborhood center. And then finally, our regional activity centers are our largest activity centers, and they are typically draw visitors from not only the surrounding areas, but throughout the city and even beyond the city. The example in the photo is South Park. That is one of our regional activity centers. The Uptown area is our biggest regional activity center. So hopefully, as we talk about this text amendment, you can keep these in mind, and it will give you a picture of where we're going. Some other things that we need to know are some of the definitions that we're going to be talking about related to this text amendment. One is a drive-through establishment, which is a principal use, and it's a business where it's only done through your motor vehicle, like this little coffee shop. This coffee shop doesn't have any indoor seating. The only way it does business is through a drive-up window. That is different than a drive-through facility, which we are proposing to rename to accessory drive-through, but for now it's called the drive-through facility. And this is an accessory used to another business that does have indoor options as well. It could be a restaurant, it could be a bank that has a drive-through facility, it could even be a dry cleaner or a pharmacy or something like that, where a portion of their business is done via a drive-through window. And finally, we're going to talk about multifamily dwellings, and they can take a couple of different forms in our ordinance. We can either have attached multifamily or stacked multifamily. Stacked are multi-story buildings, garden apartments all the way up to a high-rise condo building. Multifamily attached are typically side-by-side units, like a townhome is what we typically think of as attached multifamily, that kind of development. So this text amendment, what's the problem that we're trying to address with this? The comprehensive plan encourages multifamily residential and mixed use in the neighborhood center, the community activity center, and the regional activity center place types. However, drive-throughs aren't compatible with the goals that we have for those centers of providing a safe and comfortable pedestrian environment. And the fact is that we have some areas in those centers place types that are zoned either B1 today or B2, which are business districts. And when the UDO goes into effect on June 1st, those B1 and B2 zoning districts will translate to a new UDO zoning district, a commercial district, CG, general commercial. The general commercial zoning district that's going to be on the ground there in a couple of months won't allow multifamily today, and it will allow a drive-through, both of those. So there's a disconnect between the goals for our activity centers and what the translated zoning would allow in those centers. So that's the issue that we're trying to address through this text amendment. So this is what's proposed in the text amendment. For one, it will permit multifamily dwellings in a general commercial or regional commercial zoning district when they're located in one of those centers place types, either a neighborhood center, community activity center, or regional activity center. So if you've got a parcel now that's in one of those centers and it's going to translate to a CG, which is typically what it would translate to, or if you have a CR zoning district, ordinarily you wouldn't be able to do a multifamily. And this text amendment is going to propose to change that so that you will be able to do that. It will require, the text amendment that is, that a drive-through establishment, remember that was the standalone little coffee shop, it has to be located in either a commercial or a manufacturing and logistics place type. It would require a conditional zoning for the accessory drive-through. That's the drive-through that's associated with another business like a restaurant or a bank. So in order to do that, if you're zoned CG or CR and you're located in one of those activity centers, you would need a conditional zoning to have a drive-through. And then finally, for a drive-through, if you do have it, it would apply the dimensional and the design standards of the NC zoning district. So that is the neighborhood center zoning district. So you would not use the standards that would be typically found in your CG or your CR district, but you'd use the NC standards instead. And here's an example of a commercial site in a neighborhood center. This happens to be on 7th Street in Elizabeth. And you can see the purple lavender color is our policy map color for a neighborhood center. So you can see up and down 7th Street, we've got it mapped as a neighborhood center place type. And you can also see the other place types that are around here. You've got some neighborhood 1, which is the lighter color, and then you've got some neighborhood 2, which is a higher density residential area. You've also got a park, Independence Park is a Parks and Preserves place type. And then the campus place type is the hospital nearby. The problem here is that we've got a parcel that's currently zone B1 that's going to translate its zoning to CG, and it's the little strip shopping center on the photo on the right. So if this were to ever redevelop in the future, this text amendment would allow that site to develop with multifamily residential if that's what the developer, the owner wanted to do there. And it would only allow a drive-through in that location if they came in through a conditional rezoning. So that's kind of an on-the-ground example of how this text amendment would address this particular kind of a situation. I think at this point, before we start talking about the other text amendment, might be a good time to stop and open the floor for any feedback, questions you have on that. We can go back and look at slides if you want to do that. And I see we've got John's hand. John, can you unmute? I see your hand. John Friday. John, you're, yeah.
Okay.
Now it unmuted. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So do I understand that the height and setback restrictions for neighborhood center would then be the standards by which the multifamily would be built in what would be commercial general zoning?
That's correct. If
Yes.
you're in
Yes, it's
any of those types of activity centers, if it's the place type on the map, you would use the NC neighborhood center zoning standards.
Yeah.
So while the example you showed us, everything is neighborhood center around it. So this one is sort of backwards from what I would expect. In that location, they would be limited to 50 feet of height under a commercial general, and neighborhood center would make it 65 or 80 feet with bonus.
That's right, because that's the kind of zoning we would expect to see there in the future. It's just because it is a neighborhood center place type, this is kind of a way to get there a little bit faster with what we would see in the long term.
And I understand for that particular, that would be like East Boulevard having one piece that goes to CG when everything else is neighborhood center. But this would be a blanket change. So let's say that entire block was CG and around it was neighborhood center. This would be a drastic change for those neighbors.
Well, there is we haven't gone into it, but there is the height transition, if we're talking about height. That would.
Oh, that's right.
Never mind.
Thank you. All right. That answered it right there.
The next hand I see is, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go down in the list that I see them in my list, is Roger. Right.
What's going on with the meeting?
I don't know. Andrew?
Yeah, it was saying the host has to let me
unmute.
Okay. So, I mean, just to be clear, even though it's the place type around it is going to be at some point like 80 to 120 feet or something like that, we're going to hold the height restrictions for the multifamily there to a neighborhood center. It doesn't feel like it's going to be kind of a gap tooth eventually? Or are you saying if they want that, they need a rezone?
I think you got it, that for the foreseeable future, until we go through alignment rezoning and figure out how we would proactively rezone, this does give the opportunity
Gotcha.
But in a lot of cases also, you are close to that neighborhood one place type, and there's a height limitation that's
Yeah.
across the board anyway.
Yeah,
that would
the
impact
50 and the 65, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay,
That's all.
thank you. Eric, you're next, you're the next hand that I see.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. I put my question in the chat, but I just wanted to say it out loud as well. The proposed idea of for both the multifamily exception in CR and CG and the prescribed conditions that are in for accessory drive-throughs to also include some sort of 1 mile radius for rapid transit stations. Because as I understand, this is more of a stopgap method. You know, this text amendment is to help cross us over in between what we have currently in the policy map and where we move forward in updating that. And if you look at it currently, there's a lot of current blue line parcels that have both CR and manufacturing logistic right on the line that this would not help with both of those situations in the text amendment, as well as future silver line alignment and streetcar phases moving forward. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think we may need some other mechanism to be able to help out those areas. And it's more than just one.
Thank you. My first thought is knowing that a lot of those stations are in a center, but I know that they're not all currently in a center, and I know that it doesn't always extend out the 1 mile that you've mentioned. I think that's something we can discuss. Laura, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we can discuss it. It may be a little challenging to do in here, and it may be a matter of the longer term place type adjustments and the alignment of the zoning with those. Because if it is truly manufacturing and logistics, and it's not a center, we may not be as concerned. So then the question is that the right place type? Because we did do the alignment zoning up, as you know, up and down the blue line for what was planned in 2019. So.
Okay. Nate, and now Andrew tells me that people should be able to unmute themselves now. I'm not sure. Hopefully the issue.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
So for both items, the multifamily and the drive-through, it appears all of this would be fixed in the alignment zoning and small area planning. You're trying to correct this in the interim. And then specifically to the drive-throughs, I think there's examples that could go either way, but I'm looking at the policy map and 485 in Steel Creek, 485 in Arrowwood Road, or community activity centers. Those are not walkable environments on those streets. And I couldn't think of, I know of rezonings that have approved multiple drive-throughs because it is a location for interstate type of retail. So again, just feedback. I'm sure that there's examples that could go either way, but when you dive into the policy map, I think you're actually probably going against some recent decisions on zonings that would allow drive-throughs in those locations.
And this isn't to say that you couldn't, but it would just give it another layer of a look so that you just can't do it across the board.
Yeah, I know. It's just it'd be good if a retail broker or developer was on board to understand the changing environment about how retail stores are built. And we shouldn't focus on Chick-fil-A, but just the changing dynamic of retail. It could really limit certain retailers doing development or providing new stores in Charlotte, because a lot of them are going away from having in-store service for a variety of reasons that I don't think we all understand. I think I agree we don't want to have cars backing up in intersections and running over pedestrians, but there's probably more of a story there than just that about why the dynamics changing in that industry.
Thank you. Good comments. Dennis, I see your hand.
Yeah, appreciate it, Alan. So just want to, for the example that's up on the screen, I just want to make sure I'm following. So if the, I guess, current zoning, for example, is B1, that B1 is going to translate to CG.
Mhm.
And so since this is since this particular example parcel is within a neighborhood center, multi-family residential would be allowed. I'm
If the
just making
text
sure.
amendment is approved.
If the
yes.
text amendment is approved, okay.
Yeah.
If we were to move this example parcel to the neighborhood 1 place type, just right behind it, so basically outside of the neighborhood center, I think B1 currently allows, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but I believe B1 currently allows you to develop multifamily.
It does.
And so if this parcel was in the neighborhood 1 place type, how does that work when it translates to CG? And my understanding is the condition that's allowing, or the clause that's allowing multifamily, is that it's in the neighborhood center place type for this example.
Yeah, I understand the question. My first thought about that, before Laura, I'm sure has a thought, is if we had a B1 parcel, we probably wouldn't have mapped it as a neighborhood 1. That may not be universally true, but that's my first thought, is what's a commercial parcel doing in a neighborhood 1 place type? But I think you're right. I think it would know, this text amendment would not allow that multifamily if that were the case.
And if it were a neighborhood 1 place type, that's something we would be looking at when we down the road are looking at how do we align our zoning with the place types. Because the CG district is really meant to go with that commercial auto-oriented place type.
Okay.
That helps
Yeah.
folks to understand.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to spend too much time now. I just think there's probably some examples where there are B1s that are existing within kind of the neighborhood 1 place type. So I mean, we can maybe talk about it at a different time, but just wanted to make sure I was understanding kind of the sequencing of events and how the place types and the current ordinance and any sort of proposed changes with this text amendment are working together. So I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Dennis. Roger, I see your hand up, but I'm going to go ask Andrea first, since she has not had a chance yet, and then I'll get back to you, Roger.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for your patience, Roger. I see in the text prescriptions for stacking lanes and some other specifics there, but I wondered about curb cuts and potentially increasing the number of curb cuts in these neighborhood centers. And is it the city of Charlotte DOT that would be assessing this and approving, or is it NCDOT, and how will your groups collaborate to address additional traffic coming on and off essentially pedestrian friendly areas? Thank you.
Andrea, go ahead, Laura.
I was going to say that is handled in another part of the ordinance, so we weren't really looking at that within this text amendment. But if you go into, and Kevin can probably in the chat put the articles where this would be in the subdivision, streets and other infrastructure section of the UDO, that's where driveways are handled.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think also the streets manual as well that CDOT, Department of Transportation, has. One question that sorry, we can't easily answer is it NCDOT or CDOT? It depends on who maintains that road. So if it's an NCDOT road, then it's up to them. If it's a
City
city
maintained
maintained
road.
road,
then-
thank you, then it's CDOT.
And are the standards applicable? Are there, do you
Yes.
foresee conflicts in the standards? As there often are.
I'm not
I'm just wondering,
sure.
what would a developer, how would a developer address this? And I guess I'm understanding they would be referred to the other sections to work out those engineering details
Right.
and approvals.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Roger?
Yeah, and I just kind of want to echo some of the comments going on. I think the multifamily is a good stopgap. But on the drive-through, I'm trying to understand, I think there's this, everyone's kind of going on the consensus that drive-throughs are bad for pedestrian activity. And I think that really relates more to your drive-through establishment where cars are, wrapping around the structure like a boa constrictor. But kind of Nate's point is if you're kind of in a development and he uses kind of the interstate, retail centers, the restriction to pedestrian activity really depends on how that drive-through is oriented. If everyone's using the same driveway to get to the parking spaces and or go through the drive-through line, you're not really cutting up the pedestrian activity on the streetscape. And if it's oriented to the side or to the back of the structure, you're not really interfering with the pedestrian activity between the streetscape or parking into the structure. I'm just wondering if what we're trying to avoid is really more towards the drive-through establishment, not the accessory drive-through, depending on how that is configured.
I think it's to a certain extent both because of the amount of traffic coming in, impacting the pedestrian environment, but also the site design is going to be really critical, because you can design in ways that are on that continuum of pedestrian friendly, ways that are more pedestrian friendly and less pedestrian friendly, even with a drive-through. So I think kind of we're hearing that feedback. We've heard a few folks that were like, hey, let's still allow drive-throughs. I don't know, Roger, if you were saying with a different design approach.
Yeah, and maybe that's why you're doing the conditional checkbox, because that's how you're going to make sure that it's designed and laid out correctly. That's also, again, to Nate's point, these activity centers, which are, can be very big, and, a lot of the storefronts are not really fronting like a public street. They're coming off internal circulation. How does that seems like it might restrict it. And to go through a conditional rezoning on something like that, I mean, we all kind of know the backlog right now. I'm just wondering if it may be too restrictive in that type of scenario.
And I think it really depends on, I mean, that is the intent of the place type. So, taking a close look at that, at the policy map with the place types. But the intent, and I saw something come through from Nate also, is, what are we trying to do in that place type?
Right. I've got nothing more than that. It's just, I'm seeing, there's going to be situations where this is totally appropriate. But other situations where if you're just kind of saying, hey, in order to get a drive-through across the board, you need to go through conditional rezoning. In some of these locations of these activity centers, that, you know, you're probably going to get a lot of conditional rezonings coming through. And
I've got-
Laura, can
by
I?
the way, if you haven't been through the McDonald's drive-through line, there's not a lot of traffic flow, so it just sits there.
Laura, Allen, I've got a couple things to add before we wrap up the conversation on this. This is Dave. Thanks.
Okay, Dave, thanks. I've got Eric and John Friday. Eric?
Yep. Thank you. I just wanted to back Laura up on, I think reading the text amendment with the place types that are mentioned that require that drive-through conditional makes sense. You know, the form of what those buildings should look like in those place types should be different. They should not look what you are imagining. I think those would fit the more traditional commercial, general, and regional type of strip mall, car-oriented places. A regional activity center should not look like that. That should, you know, the building should be meeting the street. It should be walkable. It should not have this car-centric approach. So I think in order for changing and moving forward, this is absolutely necessary, and those places have to change. And if that means more conditional rezoning, so be it, because that's the very definition of what those place types need to be and look like in the future.
John Friday and then Carolyn.
So Laura, when this first came last week and I read through it, I thought what you were primarily doing was separating a new term, accessory drive-through, from like the coffee shop that is the sole use of the property. And I forgot what we're calling that now. Is this making accessory drive-through windows more or less difficult than they were before this text amendment?
The text amendment, if you're located in a center, you would have different design standards that are more pedestrian oriented, and you would have to go through a conditional rezoning and get council approval to do the drive-through.
And you have to have indoor dining?
Well,
yes.
You to actually be
Yes, you have to have
something
indoor
other
dining.
than a drive-through establishment. Yes.
The 24 seats indoor or outdoor shall be required. So how does the coffee shop standing in the middle of a parking lot get zoned? Is that elsewhere in the text amendment or?
Yeah, John, that is what's called a drive-through establishment, and that's a principal use versus the accessory drive-through as an accessory use. So the only thing that this text amendment does for that little coffee shop that's only got the drive up is it limits where you can put that to a commercial or a manufacturing and logistics place type.
All right, now I understand the distinction. Thank you.
Carolyn, and then Laura, I'm going to go to Dave and then to you to talk about our path forward because we're coming up to 1 o'clock. Thanks. Carolyn?
Just a real quick comment. I'm kind of agreeing with Eric on keeping the conditional. I understand that when you face a major corridor, I understand what Nate's saying, but having a neighborhood that actually backs and fronts major corridors, Albemarle, Independence, Expressway, and Eastway, I think each one needs to have a conditional zoning when you're talking about the drive-throughs, because the impact on pedestrians that we're trying to get where our neighbors can walk, ride bikes or whatever to these centers, that we need to be sure that, you know, people coming off the major corridors aren't cutting through our neighborhood, which, you know, affects pedestrian and biking. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out, that I think these need to be looked at in conditional zonings. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Alan, I'm actually good for right now. I think everybody's covered some of the points, so I think we're okay. Thank you.
Laura, do you want to go to the schedule slide?
Yes, and let me actually, before we do that, well, let's go to the schedule slide and then we'll talk about how we maybe make up for not being able to get to one of the items today. So these text amendments were filed on the 27th of February, are scheduled to go to public hearing on April 17th, and we need to, ideally, we'd like to have a final recommendation 4 weeks before that. We could always make changes after the hearing if we don't have that. Then we'll go to the zoning committee of the planning commission for their recommendation, and then a council decision on May 15th to have these in place prior to the UDO going into effect. I also want to mention we do have a third text amendment that is really more of a cleanup text amendment that we're not bringing to the group, but don't want you guys to be caught unaware of that. We will definitely let you know when we have a couple of sessions, general public sessions on that. I think what I'd like to propose and see what maybe just if folks could put in the chat whether it works or not, is that we have an hour meeting next Thursday to talk about the land clearing and inert debris landfills for folks who are interested in that, because I think we're going to run out of time today and won't really do that justice. Is that something, or if you want to raise your hand, thumbs up, thumbs down from folks on whether you'd be willing to come back for an hour Zoom meeting next Thursday?
Oh, let's do that.
I see a couple of thumbs up. I mean, I don't think we're going to have to do it, right? Yeah.
I think, yeah. So we will send you out a Zoom call for next Thursday. Hope folks, most folks can make it. I see that there's some folks in chat. I'm seeing one person saying I'm not available, but please proceed without me. Next Thursday at noon, I know a few people have conflicts, and sorry about that. But if you do also have any comments on, if you can't make it, or even if you can, if you want to submit any comments on these text amendments by, well, if we could get them by Thursday at noon, we'd also love to see the comments. We may be making some tweaks, so we'll just have to see as we kind of talk through this. This has been really good feedback we've gotten a lot of good and somewhat different perspectives on things. So, and I don't know, Alice, do you want to wrap us up today?
Sure. Thanks, Laura. Just wanted to say thank you to all of you. It's great to have the group convened. I'm really excited about all the different perspectives and backgrounds and geographies and just different ideas that you have. So thanks for participating today. And I know not everyone got a chance to talk, so please, feel free to send us comments. Laura, who should they direct that to?
Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. If everyone has Alan's contact information, and you'll be getting more notices from him. So that's who they should go to.
Okay, great. Thanks, Laura. So yes, please feel free, if you didn't get a chance to comment today and you've got feedback, please submit those to Alan, whether it's on this amendment that we talked about today or on the amendment that we didn't get a chance to talk about today. Either one of those, please, we want to hear from you. So thank you. We really appreciate your time and hope to see many of you next week. So thanks again.